So welcome everyone. My name is Lisa Hoffart. I'm a mental performance consultant and a registered psychologist. I work with the Sport Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan. We're doing a series of 4 webinars on mental performance over the course of the next 4 weeks. So essentially through March, we'll be having a Monday night session at 7 p.m. Talking about a variety of different topics. So welcome to our first one. Hope you're able to make all of them. If you aren't, there will be recording that's made available afterwards, but I find that coming live and being able to participate and ask questions is always great. I'm joined tonight by a guest presenter, Anna Young. So Anna, I'll let you unmute yourself and you can introduce yourself too.
Sounds great. Thank you. I'm very excited for this talk. So my name is Anna Young. I'm originally from Saskatoon, and I've been playing professional golf for the last probably about 6 years. But I recently moved back home to coach and figure out what else I would like to do with my life. But one of the things that I loved about growing up in Saskatchewan is the weather. We had a lot of things to mentally get through as just as golfers in general. And working on your mental game is one of the most important things to do for yourself. So I grew up in Saskatoon and I went to the University of Florida, and then I turned professional. And now I'm here talking to you guys, and I'm very excited to help you learn from my experiences. So enjoy.
Perfect. So I'll be, I guess, starting things off, sharing some information. Anna's going to jump in towards the end and talk about how she has really applied a lot of the things that we're talking about. In terms of our presentation tonight, the main topic is developing self-awareness. And so really wanting to do this as a way to be able to better understand ourselves as people, as athletes, start to look at the different ways that we can know ourselves, knowing our skills, knowing our tendencies, knowing our reactions, our strengths and weaknesses, and using that as a way to then build into essentially being more purposeful with what we're doing. And anytime we can act with more intention, that starts to shape more meaning. It also tends to have a positive impact on our performance. And so if we can know ourselves as people and as athletes, it can really start to make a big difference in terms of how we're showing up day to day. So anytime we can start off with a little bit of a check-in, I think it's really helpful. The first thing that I'm going to have you do tonight is just this check-in for yourself. You don't have to share with anyone. You don't have to do anything on the screen. I know it's a little bit blurry, but this is called the blob tree. And essentially, I want you to think about which of these blobs you're feeling like right now. You're the blob at the top, maybe feeling like you conquered your day, things went really well. You went on the bottom left, feeling like you're barely hanging on, getting everything done. Maybe you're feeling like you're one of the other blobs. Just starting to look at kind of who is maybe in the picture. And sometimes it can be creative. Maybe you feel like you're getting a boost or you're hanging out with a friend and that's been fun. But just using this as a check-in, to take a moment to pause, to notice yourself in this moment. Anytime we can do that, it can be a really good first step in terms of developing that self-awareness. So I'm going to pause and let you do that check-in just for yourself. You don't have to do anything with the group right now. Okay, so again, developing that self-awareness, assessing where you're at right now, assessing how you're doing. The second thing I want to do just as we start off the session tonight is just have you take a deep breath, just focus on your breathing for a minute. So take a deep inhale, let that kind of fill your lungs, feel your chest expand. You can hold it for a second if you want. Just exhale. Focus on doing that a couple times, just letting yourself pay attention to your breathing, using that to just bring your attention back to the moment. You can shift and do a bit of a body scan. Start at your head and maybe scan down to your toes. Feel your body position right now. Just feel your position in space, where your limbs are at, how your body's feeling. And again, just doing that as a way to kind of bring your attention back to the moment, to be where you're at, and just to have that check-in with your body in terms of how your body's feeling. And the last thing I want you to do is just kind of tune into your mind. Notice maybe thoughts that are moving through your head. Notice maybe emotions that you're feeling or things that are coming up for you right now. Just kind of check in with yourself. How am I feeling? How am I doing right now? You can ask yourself that question as another way to check in with where you're at. Okay, and so just to wrap up that little check-in, just take one last deep breath in and hold it and exhale. And so those can be a few different ways that we just kind of pause and bring ourselves back to the moment. A lot of self-awareness is obviously around getting to know ourselves, being in tune with what's going on for us, but also being able to bring it back to what's happening for us right now. If we can have a sense of what's happening right now, we can start to expand that and get to know ourselves moment to moment, day by day, a bit more. And so those things, being able to pay attention to your breathing, that's always such a basic one, but it can really kind of center you with where you're at right now. Paying attention to your body. What's my body doing? What does my body need? Am I cold? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I fueled? Am I rested? Am I energetic? Those can be different things that can really be good check-ins. And then obviously checking in with your mind, checking in with your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts. That's another really good way just to start building that awareness. So again, a few different ways just to start things off, but I think anytime we can start doing that, it's really helpful. So in terms of our session tonight, kind of 3 key points. What is self-awareness? Why is this important? I think you're hopefully starting to get a sense of what it is based on what we've talked about already. Hopefully you have maybe a bit of understanding about it already based on your experiences, but really just diving into that so we can have a clear understanding of what it is and then why it's important. So why do I need to do this? Why do I need to be aware of myself as a person, as an athlete, generally day to day, when I'm training, when I'm competing? How is this going to help me? And then really diving into being able to understand and develop your self-awareness. So if we can look at different ways to do that, obviously I just shared some really quick ways to kind of check in with yourselves, but being able to purposely self-reflect, develop those skills, build that up. Again, it can really make a big transfer into utilizing your brain and your body in a more connected way, which again can really transfer into your performance. If there are questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat, to unmute yourself. We do have a smaller group tonight, so happy to make it as interactive as you want. And what we're going to do to start off is just get ourselves thinking about what are important mental qualities for success in golf. And so what you're actually going to do is you're actually going to exit out of Zoom, exit out of the presentation, navigate over to whatever web browser you use. You're going to go to www.menti.com. When you get there, you're going to be prompted to enter a code. And the code is 79862799. And it's going to ask you a question. The questions are all anonymous. We're going to do one now and one at the end of the session. I will navigate over there right away. But you're going to be kind of prompted to answer this question about what are the key mental qualities for success in golf. You can put a few different answers in. You can put, I think, up to 5 per person, but feel free to put as many as you want. So I'm just going to share that. This is what it's going to look like for you. So again, you're going to www.menti.com. You're going to use the code that's at the top of the screen. So 79862799. And you should be able to type in your answers. And they're going to just start showing up on the screen. Again, they're not tied to a person. So we won't be able to tell who said what, but we will be able to start seeing answers that come up. So I'm going to give you a minute just to kind of get yourself acquainted with that. If you've got questions about how to do this or what it's going to look like, please let me know if you're kind of struggling to get to this website. But again, put your answers in when you get there. So again, you're going to www.menti.com, MENTI. When you get there, you're putting in the code 79862799. And then you can just start entering in your words or your phrases. Perfect. So we've got one word that's popping up. So that's what it's going to look like. We'll have more words that are coming. Awesome. We're getting lots now. Okay, so no distractions. You're probably feeling pretty focused. You're accepting of what's going on. You feel confident, comfortable. Probably got a clear thoughts and self-awareness, high self-esteem. You feel like you're able to plan, but also forgiving of when things maybe don't go according to plan. You've got resilience in there a couple times. Emotional control, positivity, determined. So lots of different words that are coming in. And I think this is really helpful to get us thinking about what are those important mental qualities for success in golf. Get you thinking about maybe as a general in terms of the game, but also for you specifically when you're playing your best. What are some of those things that are going on? What are some of those things that you're noticing? And so again, it's just a different way to brainstorm. We're able to start looking at not only what's relevant for us, but what other people are thinking. And maybe there are words on there that you wanted to put, but you're only allowed to put 5 in. Maybe there are things in there that you just hadn't really thought of, but make a lot of sense. And so again, that can be a starting point. If we know what's important, if we know what some of those mental qualities are, that gives us that kind of next step to be able to think, okay, how do I utilize these skills? Am I able to do this on a regular basis? Where are my strengths here? Where are maybe areas that I feel like I need to get better at? And so just being able to know outside, we often look at just kind of the physical skills, but what are some of those key mental qualities and how are you demonstrating those? So I'm going to navigate back to the presentation. If you're in the website still, you can navigate back to your Zoom just so you're able to see the slides and kind of see where we're at. What we're going to do on this next slide, this is a list of common characteristics of high-performing individuals. So they essentially what this study did is it looked at 5,000, essentially what they termed high-performing individuals. So athletes, but also things like people at a CEO level in businesses. They looked at surgeons, they looked at musicians, they looked at a number of different performers in different domains. And they looked at what are some of the key things that are common across all these people in all these different performance domains. And so these are some of the different words that they found. And you can see it's quite a list. Some of them are quite varied and some of them maybe seem like they complement each other or they go together. Maybe there are words on this list that we saw on the slide previous. Resilient, the second one there, I know that was on the Menti poll that we did, that was on there a couple of times. Positive was on there as well. Maybe there are words on here that you're thinking, okay, yeah, these all make a lot of sense. If I want to be successful in golf, if I want to feel like my mental skills are there, I'm probably demonstrating a lot of these different things. And so being able to look at what are some examples of these common characteristics of high performing individuals. Again, just having that awareness of maybe these are some of the things that I'm striving to be, that can be the first step. But what you're going to do right now is actually on a piece of paper for yourself, or if you want to in your phone or a tablet or laptop, I want you to take a look at this list and write down your top 3 to 5 strengths. So the top 3 to 5 things that you see yourself doing. And I know there can be a tendency to be hard on ourselves and think, you know what, I don't do any of these. Maybe you're thinking I do all of these. I want you to be able to pick out those top 3 to 5. And so again, this is a way to look at a list, look at some words and start to think, which of these do I demonstrate? Which of these do I feel like I'm really good at? So again, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to write down those top 3 to 5 strengths that you're noticing for yourself. And then once you have that list of your top 3 to 5 strengths, you can start looking at it and start thinking, how do I demonstrate these things? Or what are some examples of times that I've really demonstrated this? Maybe, for example, with resilient, maybe you've had some injuries and maybe you feel like you've really been determined in terms of getting yourself back on track, being able to put in the physio and the rehab to kind of work through that injury and get yourself back to being competitive. Maybe you feel like you've been really resilient over the last 2 years with this pandemic and being able to navigate ups and downs. So that would be kind of some general examples. You can make it as specific as you can, because anytime we can start drawing on what we're doing and how we're doing it, it really starts to give us these solid, concrete things of, this is how I am, this is what I've done in the past. And that can be a really good basis for our behavior. It can be a really good way to give ourselves examples of how we're doing these things. Because like I said, a lot of times athletes can be really difficult on themselves. They can be really hard on themselves and think, you know what, I always need to be better. I need to be working at things, and setting goals is fantastic. We're going to talk about goal setting next Monday. But if we can look at the ways that we are using our strengths, the ways that we are moving forward, how we're learning from those challenges, again, it gives us this different picture of ourselves that we don't always look at. And so being able to reflect on a list like this, being able to look at your top strengths, the things that you really feel like you've either honed through kind of natural ability, that's your personality, that's how you were born, or through developing that as a skill. you start to develop that self-awareness around where you're at. And then you can also really support it, like I said, by using some of those examples. So again, just another little activity for us to start thinking about ourselves and kind of processing our experiences. And then the next thing is you can actually then look at, okay, how am I applying this skill in the future? What am I doing? What does that look like? How is that going to help me? And then using that as a way to continue to drive yourself forward. So that said, we've kind of alluded towards self-awareness. I've given you a couple different activities to start things off, but when we look at self-awareness, essentially it's this knowledge about who we are, this assessment of what's going on for us in the moment. And typically when we look at self-awareness, it's obviously from our own perspective in terms of these are my strengths, these are the things I'm good at, these are my weaknesses, this is how I tend to behave, this is what drives my motivation. We tend to think about it from our own perspective, and that's what we call this internal self-awareness. And so it's really this sense of being able to see ourselves clearly, being able to look at the different things that can impact us, how we're feeling in the moment, what's driving us forward. Research is actually coming out that external self-awareness is an important piece of self-awareness as well. And it's this understanding of how other people view us. And essentially what that means is we don't want to be putting a ton of emphasis on external people. We don't want to be kind of overstating their opinions or their feedback, but it's being able to recognize that sometimes there are multiple points of view. And so I might see myself one way, but maybe my coach sees me a different way, and my teammates see me in a different way as well. And so it's being able to look at kind of various opinions, various truths, various facts, and being able to then process it. Thinking about what is true for me, how does that feel? How does my coach's feedback maybe conflict with or support how I see myself? For example, maybe you feel like you're really good at managing challenges and staying positive, and maybe your coach thinks that you could get a bit better. And so again, it's being able to bring these other viewpoints in and use that as a way to continue and enhance our self-awareness. If we can take this feedback and start to implement that in terms of our own self-awareness, again, it just continues to drive us forward because we're able to expand this bubble of how we see ourselves, and we're able to continue to make that more clear. And so really self-awareness, we want to use it as an idea that is not a fixed truth. So self-awareness is what's going on for me right now, how I see myself right now, but we don't want that to stay the same. We want that to be able to change because we want to be able to grow. We want to be able to get better as we move through our day-to-day and our year-to-year. So it's this assessment again of what's going on for me in this moment. And so there is a mindfulness about it, but it's also being able to reflect on how those interactions with your environment and those people around you are influencing you. When we start to do this, when we start to develop this internal self-awareness, a really important thing is that we want to ask what is happening or what do I notice, as opposed to why. And I think why tends to be a really kind of key question that we come back to. We want to know, why did this happen? Or why did they say that? Or why am I not able to do this yet? Why can be kind of a pretty quick question that we jump to, but it can also be a really difficult question to answer because most of the time we don't have all the information, we don't have all the facts, we don't have all those pieces that maybe we're needing or wanting to be able to fully answer that question. And so as a result, we can sometimes falsely attribute the cause of something. So if we think, well, why didn't I make that shot, or why didn't that go the way I wanted it to, we're seeing it from a certain perspective. We maybe feel like we're starting to doubt ourselves because we think, well, I didn't do that properly, or we're maybe getting negative, or we're assessing blame. And that's maybe not always kind of relevant. So those jumping to conclusions, letting in doubt, letting in negative thinking can influence then how we're moving forward next. Instead, we want to ask this question of what. So what questions really help us to stay objective? They help us to stay future focused, and they help us to feel like we're able to then act on our new insights. So instead of asking, why did I crack under pressure? Why didn't I make that shot? You're thinking, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. Some of those kinds of thoughts. You can think, okay, what did I notice in that situation? And then you're able to come back to some of those things. Well, maybe I felt nervous. Maybe my muscles were tense. Maybe I was rushing. I noticed that my heart was racing. I noticed that felt like I had 1,000 thoughts going through my mind. And so by starting to have that what, again, it brings it back to the moment, it brings it back to what you're noticing, and you're gathering information that way. And so again, that's another really important way to start building this awareness. The next thing that we want to kind of, I guess, build our awareness about in terms of our self-awareness is how these internal and external can interact. So feeling like we've got this high internal self-awareness, we're really good at knowing who we are, what's going on for us, but we've got this low external self-awareness, so we're not necessarily aware of how other people see us, we're not integrating feedback. Sometimes this can lead us to essentially having blind spots where we feel like we know ourselves really well, but we're not kind of challenging that. We're not able to integrate other perspectives. And so sometimes that can result in then us not being able to grow, us not being able to learn because we're not actually integrating new information on a regular basis. If we feel like we've got this high internal self-awareness and high external self-awareness, this is where we really start to know who we are, we start to know what we want to accomplish, and we're able to seek out other people's opinions. This is where we really start to be able to integrate the internal and external and think about how that's going to best apply for us, how we want to use that on a day-to-day basis, and how it's going to move our performance forward. Those low internal self-aware people and those who maybe don't have, they've got a low external self-awareness, they just don't quite know themselves yet. They don't really know what they're good at. They don't know what their values are, what's important to them. They also don't have a ton of information in terms of how other people see them or how they're interacting with other people. And so they might feel like they just aren't able to make decisions. It's really difficult because they don't have the information internally or externally. They might feel like they're stuck, that they just don't know how to change things. They're not happy with how things are going, but they're not sure what to do because they can't find the answer for themselves, but they're also not really getting that information from people around them. And then the last one here, that low internal self-awareness, but high external self-awareness, not really sure, again, what they want or what's going on for themselves, but very aware of how other people see them, very aware of the feedback that others are giving them. And so this can be almost too externally focused. There can feel like there's a pressure to live up to expectations. So whether it's expectations of a coach or parents or a team, you want to kind of put on this, this act of how you want people to see you, really focused on kind of appearing in a certain way, and trying to please other people, as opposed to really stopping to think, what is important to me? How am I feeling right now? And being able to then make those decisions in a way that are best going to serve them. So again, just to summarize these, in terms of building self-awareness, we want to really be able to use internal and external perspectives. And again, it's not putting too much emphasis on external in terms of kind of overly caring about what other people think, but it's using that feedback and that communication as a way to better know ourselves and be able to take those steps forward. And so especially when we're seeking out that external feedback, it's seeking honest feedback from people that you know support you. So people that are there, they want you to grow, they want you to get better, who can ask you what questions, they can help to really support you in terms of seeing yourself more clearly. The other thing with this is no matter how much progress we make, no matter how much we start to develop this self-awareness and know ourselves, there's always more to learn. So we can always have that check-in. How am I doing right now? How am I feeling? What's going on? And that can be a really exciting thing because there's always something that we can be learning about. There's always something that we can be doing as a way to just feel like we're knowing ourselves better. So with some of those things, I want to bring it back to another activity. And we talked a little bit about personal strengths with the slide that I had earlier in terms of those personal characteristics and the list that was on the slide there. But there's a really important reason that we want to use this as a baseline, especially when you look at that list of your top 3 to 5 strengths that you wrote down, or 3 to 5 characteristics. We tend to feel happier, we tend to feel more invested, we tend to feel more satisfied when we are using our personal strengths. So when we're using those qualities and those characteristics that we know really help us. And so again, that's one of the reasons why we want to start building that up. And we want to be able to recognize these are maybe the attributes that I have. These are the thoughts that help me to be successful. These are the feelings that help me to be successful. These are the actions and the behaviors that I want to take. And really then being able to use those pieces in a purposeful and intentional way as a way to be able to manage and overcome some of those challenges and adversities, the different things that can come up for you day to day. So with that, I'm going to give you another probably 4 or 5 minutes just to reflect on this next piece, looking at who am I when I'm at my best. And again, you can think about this generally in terms of day to day. You can think about it in an athletic sense in terms of when you're out golfing, when you're at training, when you're competing. Who are you when you're at your best? Who am I at when I'm at my worst? So what's going on? How are you acting? How are you thinking when you're at your worst? And then you can count on me too. So 3 things, maybe a few things that you feel like you're really committed to showing up as. And so again, you're going to answer these questions on your sheet of paper. This is just for you to reflect on, but giving you time to start thinking this through. So I'm going to pause, like I said, about 4 or 5 minutes with this, just to start reflecting on, again, some of those strengths, some of the things that maybe you're noticing take away from your strengths or showing up when you're in those less than best or worse kind of situations. And then 3 things that you really want to hold yourself accountable to. Okay, so again, being able to go through these questions starts to give you some insight. And anytime we can have this kind of paused reflection, and I gave you 3 to 4 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that. Maybe it felt really long. Maybe it felt like you've still got more to write. Either way, you're starting this process of being able to just reflect on yourself. And this reflection is another really good way to be able to build some of this awareness. And so lots of different ways that you can take this. Looking at who am I at my best, you can think about the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings, the actions that you're taking when you're at your best. You can look at what kind of people support that, what kinds of routines and patterns support that. You can look at how to try to make that more consistent so that you can show up like that on a regular basis. Sometimes it's being able to come back to the values and the things that are important to you as a driver, and being able to use that as a guide, especially when you're feeling like maybe there are opportunities for you to be less than your best. And being able to understand those things, those situations, those characteristics maybe that are showing up when you are at your worst. And again, it's maybe not as much fun to reflect on, but being able to think about how am I acting? What are the thoughts I'm having? What kinds of emotions am I experiencing? Am I in certain environments? Am I around certain people? What's going on within me, but also around me when I'm at my worst? And in some situations, it's looking at how can I try to navigate this? So are there skills, are there resources that I need to be able to build up to manage that? Are there things that I need to be able to do, behaviors that I need to be able to take so that I can change that, so I can maybe respond in a different way or manage that environment in a different way? Again, these initial questions can start kind of building out into further reflection and further answers and information for you. And then this last one, I really like that you can count on me too. Essentially, it's something that you're holding yourself accountable to, something that you want to be showing up in this way. And being able to reflect on it for yourself is fine, but being able to share that with family, friends, coaches, teammates, whoever feels like a safe person, whoever feels like someone that would actually help you to kind of support you in that way and help you to show up in that way. Again, that's just another layer of being able to not only have this awareness, but being able to continue to act on it. So again, just another little activity to get us thinking in these different ways. This resource is off of positivepsychology.com. They've got a ton of really great resources. Some are infographics, some are more articles, but essentially being able to cultivate self-awareness, there's a lot of different ways that we can be doing this. We've practiced some of these just kind of briefly tonight, but just really wanted to draw your attention to them to give you some different ideas about what you can be doing and how this might be applied. So just being able to create time and space for yourself. So being able to take that time to pause, to slow down. I know that things can feel so busy, like we're rushing from one thing to the next to the next. We've got digital distractions, our phone, notifications, all sorts of the different things that can be coming up. But just being able to take even a couple minutes to connect with yourself can be a great starting point. Create that space to be able to kind of open up and notice. And again, that's where practicing mindfulness can really play into that first one. When you do create that space, then you're able to start just kind of noticing what's going on for you right now. And so we did a couple of just basic mindfulness things at the start. So that breathing, noticing your body, kind of noticing thoughts. Those are all just paying attention to your inner states in different ways. You can try mindfulness in very kind of purposeful ways. So mindful walking. So you can walk across your room, you can walk down the street, and paying attention to how your body shifts, how your foot lands, and how your weight shifts to the next foot. If you're walking outside, especially in Regina right now, I assume other places too, there's probably snow, and you're noticing maybe the crunch of the snow. Maybe you're noticing the cold air. And so an example of mindful walking, you can do that when you're eating, just really stopping to pause and notice the food, the textures, the tastes, the smells. So we can apply kind of those little mindful moments in a number of different ways. Again, it's all with this purpose of getting to know yourself a bit better. Being able to journal. And so you've done a couple writing exercises, that last one maybe more specifically, but being able to reflect on prompted questions, getting you thinking about yourself, your different traits, your characteristics. But sometimes it's just writing things down. This is what I'm noticing right now. This is what my brain is telling me. This is how my body's feeling. Anytime we can just start jotting that down, it gets us thinking about it. And when we put it onto paper, it can trigger processing in different ways. When we look at self-awareness, again, we often think about it in terms of ourself. Practicing listening, this is where we start to integrate that external self-awareness, really paying attention to the other person, what's being said, kind of noticing what cues they're sending out. So obviously the words, but the tone, body language, maybe emotions on their face, those facial expressions. So being able to really practice that listening to pick up on what they're saying and the message that they're sending, and trying to do this in a neutral way where you're not judging or evaluate, you're listening to hear their message. And so that can be another really great way to practice some of that external self-awareness, as can this last one, gaining a different perspective, asking for feedback. And so again, finding out who maybe those trusted people are, but asking for feedback. What can I do to be better? What do I need to change there? What are your thoughts? Anytime you can ask for those kinds of questions, ask for that kind of feedback through those kinds of questions, you can start gaining that different perspective, gathering that information, and using that as a way to move yourself forward. So we know we've got these ideas about what we can be doing. There are a lot of different ways that this then starts to benefit us. We really start to see ourselves more clearly. We have this expanded vision of who we are and what we can do. So that starts to develop our increased confidence. We start to feel like we really know what we're good at. We are able to then apply that more clearly. If we start to think about the things that maybe we're not as good at, or the things that we want to get better at, that can sometimes result in increased creativity. We're able to think about, how can I get better at this? What does that look like? What are those actions that I need to be able to take? We're able to actually start making better decisions because we've got more information about what's going on for us, but also what's going on around us. And because of that, because we're more kind of in tune with ourselves and our environment, that starts the process of being able to build stronger relationships, because we're able to show up as ourselves more often, and we're able to kind of be open to what other people are bringing too. That can also enhance that communication process, where we're able to communicate what's going on for ourselves. We're able to more accurately reflect that. But as we just talked about, we're also able to listen better too. With this process, we're more likely to be more effective leaders. So whether that's kind of overtly in terms of taking a leadership role or leading by example, that can be another thing that comes up, and also contributes into really effective teamwork, because we know what's going on for us, but we're also open to what's going on for people around us. So again, lots of different benefits in terms of developing this self-awareness and really starting to think about what's going on for us. The last kind of big activity that we're going to do for tonight is really starting to take this awareness, take the strengths that we've talked about, and start developing a strengths profile. And so we've gone through a couple of these different things already. We've started to understand what key qualities are required to be successful in our sport. We're looking at our own personal strengths, so those own kind of top 3 to 5 attributes that maybe help you to be really successful. So again, when we looked at that list of characteristics, and then what you're going to do is you're actually going to pick some skills, whether they're things that you're good at or whether they're things that maybe you want to work on, and you're going to give yourself a current rating. So maybe, for example, you're looking at you know what, my focus or my emotional regulation or my resilience, that's something that maybe I want to be including in this strengths profile. You're going to rate yourself 1 to 10 of where you're at right now. And then you're also going to look at where would I like to be? And recognizing that you don't immediately have to be 10 out of 10 on all of these. It's about setting some of those realistic goals. And we will be building into goals again in more detail next week. So this is just kind of a preliminary activity, but really being able to look at how am I going to use these different mental attributes in order to take action. And so this is essentially what it's going to look like. You can see I plotted 5 along the left-hand side. So the 5 I chose were motivation, ability to stay relaxed, focus, emotional regulation, self-confidence. So again, you'd go through, you'd rate yourself, you give yourself a target rating, and then you start to come up with some actions. And so this is where we're going to invite Anna in to kind of chat through not only this activity, but just kind of how the whole concept of self-awareness has made a difference and impacted her performance. So Anna, I'll mute myself and feel free to jump in here, please.
Sounds good. So I'm going to quickly share my screen here.
Yes, 1 second. I will make you co-host. Sorry, Anna.
Okay. Oh, no, that's okay.
Yeah, all good. Co-host. And
then I can share my screen from.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, here. Perfect. Okay. Right there. Okay. Can everybody see that or not yet? All right.
Perfect. Thanks, Anna. That's good.
Everybody can see that? Okay, awesome. So when filling out this chart as a player, which is more my background, which is what I'm so excited to talk about, is all of the things that Lisa has gone over. She's gone over some amazing things, and a lot of her tactics that she's talked about today, I have used in my practices. So looking at this chart, as you're filling it out, you kind of want to just ask a bunch of questions. The more questions you ask yourself, the more self-awareness you're going to have. So for motivation, one of the things or some of the questions that I would ask myself when I'm rating myself on these and how I would continue to rate myself on these topics is, am I internally or externally motivated? Now, Lisa briefly touched on it. Internal motivation is, am I motivated by things in my head, by myself? And external motivation would be, am I motivated by winning a prize? Am I motivated by making money? Am I motivated by something outside of my control? Knowing whether you're internally or externally motivated on certain aspects of your life or your golf game can really open your eyes as to how you're going to motivate yourself to continue to get better. Some other questions on motivation is, why am I doing this? Do I feel like doing this? Is it hard? How can I build more motivation with what I'm doing if this is a goal of mine? And then going back to some of the high performance words that Lisa talked about, focusing on some of those words and, making a vision board or having, a sticker of one of those words posted on your, mirror in your room, or, even in your golf bag. Like when I was playing, one of my main words that I focused on, being good at, that I wanted to be good at, was resilience. I wanted to be great or be able to handle any situation that came at me. So I wrote resilience in my yardage book. So a lot of people who play competitions with golf will have a book of their notes and things they want to work on. And whether it's course notes for the actual tournament or just like notes that you get from your coach or things you want to remember when you're on the golf course, my notebook had resilience right across the front. So no matter where I was, if I pulled out my yardage book, no matter what situation I was in, if I just hit it in the water, if I hit it out of bounds, I was like, okay, I can be resilient. So pick a word, pick a couple words, like she said. Those are great ways to continue motivation, and ask yourself which ones you want to focus on. So the next category is ability to stay relaxed. I love that she put this in here because that is a big thing. Most people don't even realize how tense they get when they play golf or when they get stressed. And it's difficult to even realize that you're stressed until you start asking yourself these questions all the time. So, am I feeling tense? If I try to take a deep breath, is it hard? Do I have to like really breathe in to like relax my muscles? Am I feeling stuck? Like, is my neck feeling or my shoulders rising without even noticing? And I point that one out because that's something that I do. When I start thinking or if I get worried, I notice my neck just gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So if you know and can figure out the things that are triggers for what causes you to tense up or get worried, then you're able to combat those as they come around. And then when they happen, you'll be more aware that they're happening. Next category, focus. Focus is a really interesting one because it really builds off of how motivated you are sometimes. And there are a lot of things that can distract you. Is it visual? Is it thoughts? Are you distracted with what's going on in your life? Is it noise? Is it everything? Is it people talking? Knowing what distracts you is great. Figuring out why they distract you or why you're being pulled in this other direction instead of focusing on what you want to do is a great way to figure out how to continue to stay focused. Emotional regulation. This is one of my favorite categories to become aware in because this can help you in your golf game, but it can also help you in any part of your life. Most of the things we're talking about really do relate to golf and life, which is one of the reasons why I love golf, because it's basically 18 holes is basically a lifespan. You go through so many ups and downs. You've sunk a putt. You're like, okay, I'm feeling great. You hit the next shot and you're like, all right, I'm in the rough. Okay, man, that's a really tough lie. That's like really stuck in the grass. How am I going to get that out? And you always have different situations to deal with. So every round of golf is different. Understanding what triggers you to feel anxious, a little worried, angry, excited, motivated, knowing those things can help you be aware of how you're going to react when any situation comes at you. So aside from being aware of what you react to in regards to your golf game, other things that you can react to are little things. So you might have been wondering why I briefly, weirdly brought up weather at the very beginning of our talk, because it probably sounded really weird, but that was intentional. The reason why I said that was because things as little as the weather can cause you to react in ways that you don't even know. So as an example, when I was playing on tour, I was trying to figure out why certain things bothered me or certain things motivated me. And a silly thing to be aware of is the weather. If it's really dreary outside, you're more likely to feel a little sluggish. You're more likely to just like be like, okay, well, I'll just hit this one and it'll be fine. If it's really nice out, you're more likely to be a little bit happier. And, sometimes this might not bother you, but if you can be aware of these little tiny things that you react to that are small, then you can build upon all of those things. So other things that might change your emotional regulation is, am I aware of the things I react to? Who is there? Am I feeling emotions based on people just being there is their presence bothering me, or is it motivating me? Are they talking about something that's interesting? How am I reacting to that? Am I feeling excited? Am I, unsure? If they're talking about something, that's difficult on the golf course, or if they're talking about something that's not golf related, or it's an interesting subject that's taking you away from your golf game or your focus, it can change your emotional reaction, which could change how you react to your next golf shot. And as little as these things are, they do make a difference. So the more you can be aware and ask these questions of how you react and how quickly you react, or if you thought about reacting and being like, okay, that made me angry, or did I just feel angry without noticing? Those things matter. And if you can be aware of them, you can combat them. Lastly, self-confidence. this is a really fun one to talk about because there are lots of different ways to go about with confidence. You know, do I believe I can handle all the situations thrown at me? I mean, sometimes, most of the time, I'd like to think I can, but I know that there's always going to be situations that I need to work on reacting to, which is why it's great to ask yourself all of these questions. If for random situations, if this happened to me, how am I going to react? How do I think I'm going to react? And then when it ever does happen to you, you'll already be a little bit motivated and mentally prepared to handle that situation. So as a whole, the more questions you ask, the more self-aware you're going to be, and then the more you're going to benefit from all of these great things that Lisa has been listing and talking about today. As a silly example, one of the things that I did while I was on tour was I kept track of my mood for about 6 months. Just as an experiment, I wanted to see how my emotions changed throughout a 6-month golf season. Now, I had gotten really, really sick, and I was looking at my calendar. I had marked off a blue square for about almost every day for 2 months straight, and I couldn't figure out why I was feeling irritated and annoyed. And because I had gotten so sick, I had just focused on what I could do and what energy I had to practice for the little amount that I could. But what I hadn't realized was how long it had gone on. So I was working with a mental coach at the time, and I told him, I was like, I am irritated. I am annoyed. These little things are bothering me, and they've never bothered me before. What is going on? And so we talked about it, and we talked about awareness. So after we had talked about it, that's when I looked at my calendar and I was like, okay, I got sick here. And that's when I noticed all of these squares were blue, and blue meant sick, tired, irritated. And it had all happened after I had been sick for a solid 2 months. It was very clear that my energy levels were so low for 2 months that it was affecting everything. So if you can be aware of those things, the more things you can be aware of, the more you can figure out why you feel a certain way. Now, I wouldn't have been able to figure out why I was so irritated at little things or why anything was bothering me that normally didn't if I hadn't been keeping track. So it was really fun to do and see my emotions throughout the 6 months of my tournament schedule and my practice schedule. But I'm really thankful that I did that because I wouldn't have figured out that I had been sick and lost so much energy for 2 months if I hadn't done that. So that's just kind of like a silly example, but it's really interesting. The more questions you ask and the more things you pay attention to in your life, you'll notice different patterns, and those patterns will be the blueprint for your next step on how to get better or be more aware of what you need to do. So yes, those are all my thoughts on this table. And I'll leave it up to Lisa to continue on.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing, Anna. I think this gives such good kind of perspective in terms of what you might ask yourself, how you would go through that, be able to integrate kind of what you did as an athlete and how that affected you. And so I'm not going to have you do that, that chart or that strengths profile right now. We're going to wrap up the session, but that's something that I would really encourage you to take the time to do for yourself outside of the session. And so again, I would encourage you to start with your mental attributes. It could be the 5 that we listed as an example. It could be 5 that you're picking for yourself. Start there, looking at where you're at, looking at what you want it ideally to be, and then you're looking at how you're getting there. So lots of different ways to start putting that forward. But essentially it's being able to just get that as a starting point, and then you're able to start taking that action. We're going to jump back to our PowerPoint, and we're going to wrap things up with this last slide. What's one key thing that you're taking away? And again, this is a way that we're building self-awareness about what did I take out of this session? What's maybe a key learning, a key realization, a piece of awareness that I built about myself. So again, same thing as last time. If you still have that Menti window up in your screen, you can I will flip to it because it's probably just asking you to wait until I flip. So you should be able to put in your answers now. So what's my one key takeaway? So again, you're going to www.menti.com and you're using that same code 79862799. So just take a minute. What's one thing that you're taking away from this session? Perfect. So we're starting to see some come in. Self-awareness of thoughts, moods, surroundings, trying to stay in the moment, asking questions of yourself, others, reflecting. Yeah, being able to reflect on what's working for you, making some of those changes. Give a minute for a few other ones to come in. Anytime we can ask ourselves, again, like Anna said, always more questions, but what's my key takeaway out of this? Anytime we can ask ourselves this question out of a presentation, out of a class at school, out of a conversation at work, being able to ask ourselves that after a training session, after a round of golf, after a tournament, what's my one key takeaway? Again, it really kind of boils it down to some of those things that are most important and helps you to draw those key learnings out of that situation. Yeah, focusing on what you can control. Again, another really key thing. So with that, I know we're pretty much right at 8. I will just navigate back to the PowerPoint just so that you can, we'll do, again, a quick summary. Just recognizing that self-awareness is a work in progress. So start where you're at. That's one of the key things of self-awareness is you have to acknowledge, where am I at right now? Obviously physically, but kind of mentally, emotionally as well. Recognizing that there's always an opportunity to learn and grow. And as athletes, I think that's a really exciting thing. Again, being able to have that internal perspective, knowing where you're at, what's going on for you, but also seeking out additional information as a way to challenge your opinions. Being able to ask what questions as a way to gather that information, a way to start getting different types of feedback, incorporating that. Being able to look at some of those strengths and those gaps, looking at where I'm at right now, where I'd like to be, and then a nice tie into our session next week, really being able to set some of those goals for consistency, change, and improvement. And again, we'll go into goal setting in our whole hour session next week. So something that we can continue to build on off of this session. With that, I'm going to throw my email address up here. Anna, you can put yours in the chat too, just in case people don't have yours, but just mental.trainer@sastel.net. If you do have questions, please feel free to reach out at any point. I'm happy to answer any questions right now if there are any. But I do appreciate everyone coming tonight and appreciate Anna joining and sharing her perspective as well. So thank you, everyone. With that, we will wrap things up.
Yes, thank you again for having me as well. It was very fun to learn from you and really cool to see how much of the stuff that I've worked on in my athletic career that we've talked about today. And it really reminds me how simple we should make things. We make things very complicated. And I know it kind of seems overwhelming when I'm telling you to ask questions about literally every possible thing. But I loved the comment in the slide before that it said, focus on the things you can control, but also be aware of if you're living in the present moment. That is a big one. Another thing to be aware of, am I aware of what I'm doing now? Am I worried about the future? Am I worried about the past? It's all simple. You can ask the questions, you can answer them, and it's just fun. You get to learn more about yourself. It's awesome.